This is Michael Smith from the Real Talk School of Nursing podcast. Nursing school is a struggle for many. Everyone struggles at one point or another, even that seemingly bulletproof student you're thinking about right now. Some people will struggle with tests, some will struggle with clinicals or lab or sims, and some of those students who struggle with none of those things will struggle within the profession. Nursing school is a struggle for some from day one until the day you graduate. It was for me. It might be for you too. But trust me, if I can make it, you can. Just keep working hard. Be truthful to yourself. Be joyful in the hard stuff. On the other end of school is a profession that is amazingly hard. I'm not going to lie to you, especially in the first year. And the rewards, though amazing, are sometimes heartbreaking too. You will have to wade through a lot of muck and mud to get to these amazing little jewels of experiences that make coming to work worth it. Nursing and nursing school isn't just about learning content, about learning the tasks that you have to do. It's about learning to grow through adversity, coming out the other end stronger. You will struggle outside of school too, but I promise you when you make it, it's worth it. So I'll see you on the other end of this crazy nursing school journey. Welcome to the Real Talk School of Nursing podcast, Season 4, Episode 15. I am your good and faithful host, Michael Smith. Today, we're going to be talking about being a parent while being in school, while your kids are at home while in school. And we're going to be talking about 7 characteristics of highly successful nursing students and nurses. And we are going to talk about delayed gratification and the benefits of a regimented schedule while studying for the NCLEX. After that, let's just see where it takes us. Thanks for joining me on this crazy nursing school journey. Let's jump right in. Okay, so let's jump right into prereqs. So let's talk about being a parent while in school. And I know this can apply to basically every stage that we're in, regardless of even how old your kids are. If you have kids in elementary school like mine are, and those kids are home trying to use computers and do distance learning while you are also home trying to do distance learning and stuff like that. I can completely understand how that can be really, really tough. And I got to tell you the truth. I have no idea how to get around this. Like, the newest challenge, regardless of your relationship status, is that if you have kids and you are in school or working, and your kids are in school and might be doing school from home, I don't know how to get around this. This is an issue that I can't fully get my arms around. And I know, how many families do you know who have more than one kid, for example, especially if the kids are still in elementary school or have, do they have a computer for each child? I don't have a computer for each of my children. There are 6. So the question kind of becomes like, how can a parent work and do their job effectively and guide their child through schoolwork each and every day, all day? And I think it's more likely that your older kids, are hopefully are better at sitting down and doing schoolwork without supervision, but, not necessarily, I guess. But lots of teenagers still need help motivating themselves in school, and I guess that's, a lot of adults have trouble, with that often enough, though, right? So I feel like this is going to be an almost insurmountable problem, and that doesn't mean that I don't have some suggestions on how to help ease the pain, but, I don't know, maybe as I'm exploring this a little bit, a few of these ideas might seem completely radical, but let's start with the basics. Let's just start with the basics first. If you are a parent, you have a priority to your education and your job first. That sounds kind of horrible if you're a parent, because you're like, no, my kids are my first priority. This is a really hard thing for parents because most of the time we sacrifice for our children. But in this case, it's your education and your job that allows you to sacrifice for them later. It keeps, your job keeps food on your table. It creates the opportunity for a better life later if you're in education, if you're in your education. And if we don't get through our education, that means there will be less opportunity for a better life later for you and for your kids. Now, if your kids have certain times that they have to be online, like for example, their teachers are on from, I don't know, they have some kind of schedule. But if you are like most people, like me, you have limited computer resources, then the timeline is kind of the first priority. Set the schedule for when each child needs to be online. Let this be the foundation of your daily schedule. And I do suggest that you create a daily schedule, a daily rhythm, and that kind of regiment will help. I mean, kids really benefit from having a predictable schedule. And I think this will kind of, if they can kind of march in tune to this will really help. Because it's going to help you. If you're home with them all day, it's really going to help you too. Help create some normalcy for you and for them by having some kind of routine. Kids thrive in an environment where they have a routine, a base routine to rely on. And that might start with getting kids up at the same time that they usually do, getting dressed, getting breakfast, getting, outside to play for a little bit. I remember being in grade school and, and middle school and whatever else is we get to school early and you can play outside for a little bit before you have to go inside for your first class. In high school it was, you can hang out with your friends or whatever before the first bell, because the buses usually got you there before, first bell. So where was I in my thought process here? So, get them up, get them dressed, get breakfast, a little time to play outside, and then, getting some school or, work done for you and for them. So if you have one kid who needs to be online with their teacher from like 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. or something like that, then they have the priority of the computer during that time. And again, I have and I will continue to promote that you need a dedicated study space. You need, and if you are now sharing the study time and study spaces, this needs to be away from toys, away from TVs, and other electronic devices, whether it's iPads, tablets, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. I am always going to promote having dry erase boards because I love them. And many teachers in classrooms still use them, so it's a familiar and useful tool for kids in school. And as well as being a useful tool for you as you study. Again, I love them. So here's kind of my more radical idea. And, depending on what your school situation is going to look like this fall, I don't know. But, because a lot of the stuff is, there's so much stuff that's still up in the air. Today is September 2nd when I'm recording this. I got home a little bit earlier from work than I usually do, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, so I'm post-shift brain, pardon me, but there is still stuff that is up in the air as far as like my kids' schedule goes and what their year is going to look like, and whether or not that lasts for any length of time either. But anyway, so here's my radical idea. Because, again, we still don't know what the school situation is like, but I think if we plan for the worst and hope for the best, I think this is probably radical good idea to maybe look at least to look at, right? Because again, here's my prediction. The kids are mostly going to be fine. Like all kids, they're going to get colds, and families aren't going to get their flu shots, and because the entire world is on high alert for COVID, of course, every sniffle, cough, and cold will cause a panic in the schools. And I think inside of 60 days from the start of school this fall, many schools will shut down, and everybody will be stuck back at home, doing distance learning, in quarantine, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. So if you are involved in your school at all, I sure hope that the younger teachers are able to stay in the classrooms for people who send their kids back, and hopefully some of the older teachers can teach online modules and stuff like that, for families who want to keep their kids at home. But I think probably inside of 60 days, everybody's going to be home anyway. So here's my idea. What if you sacrificed your TV room and made a classroom inside your house? What if you had desks or tables, chairs, a dry erase board, and you made a mini classroom for your family in your home? What if that whole room was school? Everything that happens in that room is for school. And what if you, could work on your homework and study while your kids sat at their own desks, tables? You try to create that as much as you can, recreate that as much as you can, and they did their work. This is, of course, assuming that not everything the kids are doing is online. Hopefully some of it still revolves around, an actual writing utensil and a workbook, doing some physical kind of schoolwork. I'm not under any kind of misconception that this is free of challenges. I get it. Little kids making noises while older kids, need quiet. Differing needs for attention, interruptions, and everything else. I get it. It's going to be a challenge for sure. But I don't know, just think about it. It might work. It might just work. The other suggestion that is that maybe each child gets a desk or a table in their rooms, where they can have a dedicated study space. Of course, that might mean if you have younger kids, that might mean that there's going to be a purge of distracting toys from the room that might have to be put elsewhere. Maybe you'll have to determine, how much to do for each kid depending on age and, each kid's temperament. But regardless of your age, here's what I'm always going to recommend. Do not study in bed. Don't do it. It's a recipe for laying down and taking naps, and it's not good. I'm big on compartmentalizing things, and that means that bed should be for sleeping. And unless you and your kids have a desk in their bedroom or can get one in their rooms, I think it's best to find spaces outside of the bedroom for schoolwork specifically. So traditionally age, kidless students. So you're a normal college student age and you don't have kids, you're not in a, whatever your relationship status is, it doesn't matter. But if you're a more traditionally aged student and you don't have kids, then none of this applies to you, right? No. I still think you need to have a dedicated study space. I still think you need to avoid studying in your bedroom and especially on your bed. I think that if you aren't in a normal classroom setting, you especially have to have discipline and have a clearly defined schedule and space for studying. I think that's probably one of the most important things I can think of when it comes to having to do distance learning. I've talked about in past episodes, I think studying for the NCLEX is very similar to having online classes. So I can sympathize and empathize with you guys, as far as that, because I didn't have to do social distancing while I was in school. So I think you need to be very internally driven, and I think you need to be very disciplined. And to start, I think you have to have a direct one-for-one exchange for the number of hours you normally spend in a classroom each day, and give yourself a few extra hours, because there are going to be some setbacks as you figure all of this out. Of course, this is all just my opinion, and if other things work for you, fantastic. But I think you should be at least thinking about these issues, and hopefully I can get you thinking about some of the solutions to the challenges that we're all going to face, because I'm studying for my CEN. I'm going to be doing all of this stuff alongside of you. The profession doesn't let you rest for very long. There's always something to study. So I'm with you. All I have to say is that good luck to you in this coming semester, to all of you, whether you have, good luck to you and your kids, to your spouses, your significant others. I have a feeling that it's going to be a semester of hardship, but also I think it's going to be a semester where we are all going to learn a lot about ourselves, and hopefully learn a lot about discipline, focus, and dedication. So, coming up, let's talk about some of the characteristics of good students, good nursing students, good nurses, or at least, the students and nurses that I looked up to and wanted to emulate when we come back. Patience. What is that? Who even has time for that? PIE is P-I-E. Patience in everything. It's a simple yet difficult, yet powerful thing to learn. Think about the last time you were impatient. What came of it? How patient am I with others? How patient am I with myself? How patient and kind am I with the trials and unexpected turns in life? Am I patient and fully aware of the blessings of each day? I've been given a gift, be it fruit or life. It's up to me to choose how to use it. This is a book of short essays on life through something as simple as pie. Here's Coletta reading Piology 101.
Piology 101, the synchronicity of pie in life. How awesome to ponder how our Creator has put our individual ingredients so carefully together. Yet we get to choose our finishing touches and the temperature settings of the day. Sometimes we're hot, sometimes we're not. Every day is spent forming our own creation of self. Some days we also form a pie. Our ingredients of the day can be mixed up, nutty and complicated, or just sweetly simple. Fruits grown out of even the best soil and conditions may become bruised, but even imperfect fruit can become a pie to savor. Life, as imperfect as it may be, has a multitude of savory and sweet bites in each new day. Pie in life, filled to the brim with the fillings of our choice, oozing and bubbling over, and just so beautifully messy. Pie in life, any pie or day can end in failure and be perfected on the next. Pie in life, presented in pieces and are just what is left over, or sometimes well presented, well-rounded as a whole. Pie in life are made up of a beautiful variety of spices and different tastes. Pie in life, overworking can make it too tough. Pie in life, tender care will always produce a perfect foundation. Pie in life, dig in while it's fresh. Share that creation.
Get your copy of The Pie Letters by Coletta Hewitt in softcover or ebook from thepieletters.com. That's thepieletters.com, and buy your copy in softcover or ebook from thepieletters.com, or you can go to Amazon. Love you all. God bless.
You're listening to the Real Talk School of Nursing podcast.
All right, so let's talk about the 7 characteristics of successful nursing students. First off, I think they were all independent, autonomous. You've heard me talk about how much I value and loved group study sessions, but it's the nurses and students who can work independently and as a team that are so highly valued. Let's bring up an example. Have you ever worked with someone who just can't do anything alone? I've known a couple. And it always seemed like they wanted to, excuse the expression, but they wanted to mooch off of someone else's work. And that just doesn't sit well with me. Again, as someone who highly values group study sessions, it assumes, my assumption is, or my presumption is, that each person is going into that study session, into that group study session. They have done some work, and they've done some work independently and brings both knowledge and questions to the session. Number 2, they relied on the scientific method. They make, the scientific method for review is you make an observation, ask a question, form a hypothesis or, testable explanation of some sort. You make a predictable based, a prediction based on the hypothesis, test the prediction, and then, go through multiple iterations. You use the results to make a new hypothesis or a new prediction. So you're always kind of changing. You're always experimenting, so to speak. So this means that they use empirical data instead of using anecdotal stories to formulate their conclusion. Now, that doesn't mean that anecdotes can't temper what we think. And I think we should always assume that we have incomplete data. Leaving the door, you leave the door open for other possibilities. And my friend Andrew Heaton, in our episode together, we talked about just like, I'm always going to assume that I'm at least 20% wrong. So I'm open to new things. I'm open to other people knowing things that I don't. I'm open to the possibility that I'm probably wrong in some way. Okay, so third, and I think this is kind of a big one, is work hard. Working hard is the key to success. Okay, these nurses and these students who I saw as the most successful at work and in class were disciplined, and they worked before they played. Is anybody seeing a consistent motif here? These are the students who always seem to have their stuff together, right? They would, these are the students who always had meals packed. They always had their homework done. They would have extra set of scrubs. They had their notes well organized. These are the nurses and students who make up, who make the presumption in their own life that if they didn't meet their goals, they didn't work hard enough. They made the presumption that if something went wrong, they're going to start with the idea that it's something that they didn't do. And I think most nursing instructors are going to make that presumption as well. And I think more than likely, if you look back at something you've done where you didn't quite hit the mark, I bet that if you look back at that, you can find some areas where you could have put in more effort. Okay? These nurses and students never made excuses for themselves, and they never blamed someone else for anything. The difference between the person who blames their, the example that just kind of flashed in my mind was it's the difference between the person who blames their dog for eating their homework and the person who blames themselves for leaving their homework out and on the floor where their dog could get at it. Okay? They're never going to make excuses. They're never going to go to the teacher and be like, my dog ate my homework, So fourth, let's go through number 4. These students and these nurses planned for the future. These students were about delaying gratification, delay of gratification, sacrificing what they want to do for what they have to do. They work hard now, and then they relax and play later. These nurses and these students also didn't blame or berate themselves or others if things weren't perfect. Okay, that's an important distinction. Okay, that's an important thing to do. They're the nurses and students who know that small incremental steps accumulate, and as long as they were making progress, that's what's best. The example that I like hearing and using would be something like, the head to toe assessment. Even Like, even if you can do each step well, you can do the CNS, or not CNS. You can do the central nerve checks, right? You can do all of that. Even if you can do, let's see, so head to toe assessments. You can do a neuro check. You can do a respiratory. You can do a cardio. You can do a skin assessment. You can do all of those things independently. But sometimes putting it all together in a single big step can be really challenging. But as long as each time you do a complete head to toe, you don't continually make the same mistakes each time, I think that's success. And if you practice each one of those ingredients, so to speak, each one of those ingredients, and you're doing all of this step by step by step, and then you practice it as a whole, if you, let's say you do the neuro checks perfect the first time, and then you screw something up in the neuro checks later on, but you did the respiratory checks perfect, or the cardio, or whatever it is. As long as you're not making the same mistakes, I think that's, it's the spinning plate thing. Like, right, you're gonna drop something. You're not gonna be perfect, but it's not important for you to be perfect. It's important that you're able to progressively incrementally get better. Another example is, like, when I was in orientation for my job as a nurse, I felt absolutely overwhelmed, especially in the first couple months. Sometimes I hated coming to work. I'll be honest with you. There were days when I absolutely, I was like, why am I here? I'd pull up to the hospital, and the parking lot, people are parking on, practically on top of each other, and it was just, I knew it was going to be an ass kicking. The pace and my volume and the volume at my hospital is very high, and one of my preceptors seemed dedicated to overwhelming me, but I had to continually remind myself that I was getting better every day. I very rarely made the same mistakes twice, and that's part of why I always felt overwhelmed, because as soon as I had a handle on something, I'd get another spinning plate. So as soon as, great example perhaps is, as soon as I didn't have to worry about IV skills, I'd have some other thing, like what labs to order, what scans, thinking ahead about other issues, reassessments, and of course, managing that with multiple patients, each day got better. And if I had to remind myself, like, okay, what were you like on your first day? Are you better than that? Thank God you're better than that. And it was, so each day has to get better, okay? Incremental, small baby steps. And by the time I was done with orientation, I was able to operate pretty independently. I was smart enough to know when to ask for help and when to ask questions. My first independent shift was a little scary. I looked back at the progress that I had made, and even though I didn't feel like I was any smarter or more skilled, because, it was hard to see the day-to-day progress, the incremental effect was very evident. Okay? All right. So, number 5, time management. So, I get it. Some of these blend in with each other a little bit, but students and nurses who seem to perform best had great time management skills. So as a student, as if you're a student, these were the students who, again, always had meals prepped. They were never late to class. They stuck to a study schedule. And, if someone needed them, they were pretty much always at the same place at the same time, blah, 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 right? They used time, again, because this is something that I highly value. Study groups when they came to study groups, it was very effective. They used the time that we had in study groups very effectively. And again, I was not always perfect. Sometimes I was the distractor early on. It happens. It's okay. It happens. Be forgiving of each other if everybody isn't 100% focused, on, every single group study session. But overall, try to make that time that time effective. Okay, as a nurse, it's really, really important to understand your schedule during the workday. What time meds are due, how long tasks will take, and you have to carve time out for yourself to eat and use the restroom if possible. And let's face it, it's a reality for most of the profession that at some point you're going to have a red pill and a blue pill in your hand, so to speak, and you're going to be like, all right, bathroom or eat? Bathroom or food? Which one am I going to choose? And by the way, I always choose the bathroom. But, you have to try to carve that time out for yourself to do those things. And then leave gaps for all the unpredictable stuff that can happen during the shift. Betsy V, we are going to have her back on at some point soon. But she talked about in the first couple of months of her being off orientation that, be like, all right, got through meds, and then something would happen and threw the whole day off. It only takes one thing sometimes. Okay, so that's why it's important to have really good time management skills. Okay, number 6, outcome and effectiveness orientation. Even though progress counts, even though understanding that the incremental things in the end count, we need to still be effective. If we are spending all of this time and working really hard towards all of these things and we're moving in the wrong direction and we still have poor outcomes, it doesn't really work out, right? So we should be taking action. And I think some of the worst things that you can do, I think some of the ineffective nurses and students out there remain idle. And I think sometimes you have to do something to improve the situation. And you can't control everything in most situations, but you can do something to improve the things that you do have control over. So good decision-making skills will come with time and, as you gain more experience and all of those things. So if you're, again, looking at kind of the progress of things and you are looking at the effort that you're putting into things and things are not going, you're not being very effective and you're not having very good outcomes, some of that might be just due to decision-making skills. It means that you are young. It means that you're inexperienced, and that means that you have to give yourself a little bit of grace, and you have to, understand that if you are moving in the wrong direction, change your direction, become more effective. Okay? Experience only comes when you take action. And hopefully by the time you're out of school and off orientation, you have a good foundation of knowledge and supervised experiences where you can ask for help and you can avoid negative outcomes for patients. But no one has ever benefited from sitting on the fence and doing nothing. Okay? Last but not least, and this, of course, is going to be included in everything. You knew it was coming. Good communication. As a student, you have to be able to write clearly. If you're in a BSN or higher program, I should say, you're going to have to use APA rules for writing, and that can be really hard to get right. But it's part of effective communication. And there are lots of other types of communication, obviously, written or otherwise. It's important being able to speak clearly with colleagues, instructors, write effective emails. Those are all important skills, and it's not difficult to imagine a real world scenario where ineffective communication can have detrimental effects on grades if you're a student, or patient outcomes if you're working. So there are a couple of principles in communication that we should perhaps consider. First and foremost, be polite, especially if you are in front of other people. If you and a colleague, if you and your provider, if you and a tech that you're working with, if you and another nurse are working together, and you have a conflict or you have a disagreement, bring it up with them one-on-one if possible. If it's not possible, ask for another colleague's input, a third party, to help settle the issue. Okay? I can imagine very few instances in the last year and a half of my practice where I have not been able to step aside or just say, can you excuse us for just a moment, or something like that, where a conflict or a disagreement on how to move forward can't be resolved quickly and politely. And I think we discussed with Andrew Heaton in one of our previous episodes that we need to apply the principle of charity, or otherwise known as the charitable interpretation. If you don't know what that is, it requires interpreting a speaker's statements in the most rational way possible, and, in the case of any argument, considering its best and strongest possible interpretation. In the narrowest sense, the goal of this method is to avoid attributing irrationality or logical fallacies or falsehoods to another person's statements, when a coherent and rational interpretation of the statement is available. Simon Blackburn, I think's his name. It's I can't remember exactly how he put it, but it's something like, it constrains the interpreter to maximize the truth or rationality of, what the subject, of the subject's saying. So it requires you to apply the most rational and the least likely or the least offensive interpretation of a statement. Okay? And that's part of good communication. So that will conclude the nursing school segment of today's episode. We'll be back to talk about NCLEX prep and new grads after this quick break. Our sponsor for this segment is Bergman Grossman's Day-Old Countryside Open Air Fish Market. We're all strapped for cash, so why spend your hard-earned money on fresh fish when you can spend less money on a slightly older fish? Let's be honest. Is a day-old fish sitting in the sun in the geometric center of the United States really that much different from fresh fish that's sold at oceanside markets? Some of the fish might be slightly older than a day, but that just means it's discounted even more. Cook it over a campfire and you'll never be able to tell the difference between necrosis and good old campfire char. So go down to Birchman & Grossman's Day-Old Countryside Open Air Fish Market right across from the Sunset Motel and RV Park in Belfouche. Mention the Real Talk School of Nursing podcast for a free basket of raw crustaceans. Take them fresh or ship them anywhere in the lower 48 via the U.S. Postal Service for their $8 special 6-day guaranteed delivery service. So stop down at Birchman Grossman's Day-Old Countryside Open Air Fish Markets in downtown Belfouche, or stop by for the grand opening of their second location, Birchman Grossman's 2-day-old Countryside Open Air Fish Market, just off Highway 85 in Jolly Dump. Pasture parking and porta-johns are available for all paying customers. BYOTP, or bring your own toilet paper. Bergman Grossman's Day Old Countryside Open Air Fish Market. If you think the name is a mouthful, wait till you try the fish. Okay, so welcome back. Let's talk about, once again, the need for most of us to have to work and study alone while distance learning, while in school, or if you're preparing for the NCLEX. Because what we want to do after the burden of daily assignments and group projects and writing assignments where you respond and interact and are graded upon your initial post and subsequent responses to a particular subject, and when the quizzes are done and so forth, and all of that stuff is gone, what we want to do is celebrate and relax a little bit, go outside. But, and I think there is a time and a place for celebration. There is a time and a place to do some major relaxing. I took a vacation. I literally took a 10-day vacation. It was amazing. I went down to Florida. If you guys have seen any of the interaction that I've done with barefoot charting down at Sanibel Island in Florida, they're fantastic. I had a great time fishing, and that's basically what I did for 10 days. I sat on the beach. I was out with the kids. It was fantastic. So there is a time and a place for that when you're done with school and after you graduate, and before you start, preparing for your NCLEX. But I think it needs to be measured, and I think it needs to be limited because you're not out of the woods yet. As always, I suggest taking a planned and regimented approach to this time of your life. So let's talk about the idea of immediate gratification and delayed gratification, as I've mentioned earlier. This seems to be a motif of the episode. So there's this really cool kind of psych study, and it's called the marshmallow test. I think it's called the marshmallow test. So you take a child and you bring them into a room and you put like a marshmallow in front of them and you torture them, so to speak, and you say, hey, kid, see that marshmallow? And the kid's like, oh yeah, I see that marshmallow. And you say to them, you can have that marshmallow right now if you want. But if you wait a little bit, I think the experiment's like 5 or 10 minutes, whatever it is, then you can have 2 big marshmallows. And, that puts the kid in quite a position. They're being asked to trade an actual, concrete, tangible marshmallow for 2 hypothetical future marshmallows. And, that's not easy for a whole lot of people to just conjure up hypothetical futures, especially when they're, it's difficult to imagine something hypothetical that has the same tangibility as something real and concrete and right in front of your face. So experimental leaves, the experimenter, the scientist, whatever, and then some kids will grab that marshmallow and just gobble that thing down. Pow! You want to hear that again? So other kids, as soon as the adults are out of the way, the kids will do all kinds of things to distract themselves. They're going to do everything in their power to distract themselves. And, I don't know, sit on their hands, whatever a child sitting in a room at a table with a marshmallow or some kind of treat on it, can do to restrain themselves from gobbling down that marshmallow because they can think of a future. And, what's happening is the higher brain functions are in an all-out war with the underlying motivational systems that govern such things as hunger and sweetness and gratification. And hunger is regulated, if you can call it that, by the hypothalamic system. And it says, there's something sweet and fat sitting right there. Grab it and stuff it down. And I'm sure you can feel some empathy or sympathy for the child. The hypothalamus has these, has powerful control over, over the brain. And, the voluntary control centers have these, has weak control over the hypothalamus. So again, in the neuro sense, one thing is in control because, again, anatomically speaking, we're not really all that different from cavemen. So if you can understand why a caveman would not be able to resist or not want to give up, like, hey, there's a mammoth steak in front of me right now. I need to eat that because if I don't eat that, then I won't be able to survive later, blah, blah, blah. Right? It's not that hard it's not that hard to understand that struggle. But you can feel something for this kid because, even today, who among us hasn't struggled with something as simple as a sweet snack when we were trying to lose weight, or we have studying to do and someone invites us over for dinner or to go out for drinks or something. Like you can understand that, and if you don't have empathy for this kid. So we understand that it's not an easy thing to do. But here's the important thing. The long-term outcome for those kids, who could delay gratification in the marshmallow test, the outcomes are much more positive for them than for the kids who are impulsive and eat the marshmallow instantly. And I think that's directly translatable into us as adults. The adults who can delay gratification for anything is much more positive than for people who do whatever they want when they want. Again, you can imagine probably 5-10 people in your life who have no regulatory system when it comes to that. If you can't delay gratification, and I don't just mean like, in this test, but I like on a broad base of things, and you're a kid. So what's that mean? So like, let's imagine a kid, and you're not just a kid who, like can't give up marshmallows because marshmallows is your absolute favorite thing in the world. But on a broad base of things, you're a kid, and you can't delay gratification. You can't help someone else get something they want, even if you want it at the same time, because it will bear better benefits later on, right? If you can't do that and you're a kid, other kids aren't going to like you because you want everything you want your way and you want it now, and you're liable to have a temper tantrum. You haven't got the kind of self-control that's necessary to make it to make you fun for other people to play with. And I think if you think back to your childhood, it was probably, and it's longer ago for me than it was for many of you, but I can still remember that kid who had a huge temper tantrum anytime they didn't get their way. I'd bet that there are probably people within recent memory of your life that if they didn't get their way, exactly their way, when they wanted it, probably also had a huge temper tantrum. I bet you that's well within all of our memory. And most people don't want to be around the people like that. So, in my estimation, this is why I try to help people create a regimented schedule for studying. Because I don't think that just sitting at your desk with no breaks and nothing to look forward to is realistic. But rather than just go at it willy-nilly and allow breaks to get out of control or to be constantly distracted by your phone or email or social media, I think that by building in breaks, we have an easier time when the impulse to check our phones comes around, to be able to say to ourselves, No, I'll check it in 30 minutes when my, when my break is around, right? And I think that's something that we can all do. So let me take a quick break, and we'll come right back and talk about probably a little bit more orientation, more things that are focused towards the new grads. Okay, so let's be right back. Are you tired of the same old badge reel? Do you have to wear the same scrub color as everyone else? Are your undershirts boring and kinda stinky after wearing your lucky shirt through 5-in-a-row 12s? You can wear your personality in other ways. Go to badgeladybynerdwear.com and check out her massive selection. Tell her you're a Real Talk School of Nursing podcast listener and use the promo code REALTALK20 at checkout for 20% off your order. Expect 2 to 3 weeks for custom orders and a few days depending on her actual job schedule, because she's a real nurse, to get your badges made and shipped. I know you'll treat her like your best friend at clinicals, so go to badgeladybynerdwear.com and order the coolest custom and original badge reels out there. Go to badgeladybynerdwear.com and use the promo code REALTALK20 for 20% off your order. That's badgeladybynerdwear.com and use the promo code REALTALK20 for 20% off your order. Okay, so welcome back. This new grad section is going to be very short because I want to leave you with a statement that's short, to the point, and something for us to all think about. If life, whether it's your normal life or whether it's your work life, isn't yet what it should be, then I think you have a primary responsibility to do something about it. The place to start is looking at your own errors and then to fix them. It's a safe bet because you're probably doing some things that you shouldn't be doing. And if you fixed those things, would make things better. So it's time to let go, and it's time to sacrifice who you are for who you could become. It's time to sacrifice who you are for who you want to be. And that's where I'm going to leave things today. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm very tired. I got to get my kids up in about 10 minutes and get them ready to go to school or daycare, whatever you want to call it. And that's where I'm going to leave things today. I'll do a little bit of editing, and I will hopefully publish this tomorrow morning or maybe yet this morning. I'm not sure. We'll see where I am. We'll see where things go and where I am. But I hope you guys all have a great week. Love you guys. Please write in. Let me know how you're doing. Tell me about your struggles, the things that you're dealing with, and tell me how I can help. Love you all. See you later. This Real Talk School of Nursing podcast is a Real Talk production. This podcast is dedicated to our brothers and sisters on the front lines of this COVID-19 situation.
Sic semper tyrannis, facta non verba.
Good night, Steve Cannon. Wherever you are. Annyeong kasayo. Now you go home. Thanks for listening. You can support the show directly on our Patreon account at www.patreon.com/realtalknursing and gain benefits such as early content, shoutouts, and special swag. Write into the show at realtalknursing@gmail.com or use Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at realtalknursing. Thank you for supporting our friends, affiliates, and sponsors and following us all on social media. More listeners, likes, and followers means more and better shows. Make sure to share the episode with classmates and give a hand up to those who are coming behind us. Don't forget to reach out and tell us if you have any announcements or special shoutouts to friends, classmates, or colleagues. If you like the show, the Real Talk School of Nursing podcast is available everywhere, so go to wherever you download podcasts, subscribe, rate us, review us, write into the show, and smash that subscribe button. Remember to leave only 5-star reviews because that's the only ratings that count to get us noticed by more nursing students. We want you to be part of this crazy nursing school journey. The Real Talk School of Nursing podcast is a holy moly, I can't believe you're still listening to this podcast.